I sometimes find the most joy in the simplest things in life. And in the case of Witchfire, this is the Striga stake gun. For those of you who haven't unlocked it yet, spoilers, I guess. Everybody should probably unlock it fairly quickly in the game. I believe it's in the collector's room, available at Gnosis level 1. It is a reboot of the old stake gun from Painkiller, which was a game made, released in 2004, I believe, by at least some of the same people working on Witchfire. And when I saw that this was included in the game, I wasn't entirely sure, just based off the trailers, if it was going to carry the same oomph as its previous version. Having played with it, it is now definitely my favorite weapon in the game, and I'm gonna say it's a straight up an improvement on its original, both in terms of feeling and handling, but also with all the synergies and things that are specific to Witchfire, making it a lot more engaging to use. Anyway, you see me here on Scarlet Coast, taking on a fairly low level threat just with the Striga, nothing else. And I really do love trying to land those headshots with this weapon. It's kind of the only weapon in the game right now, the only non-demonic weapon in the game that has a traveling projectile. Everything else is, as far as I can tell, either hit scan or practically hit scan weapons. And so the fact that it's a projectile weapon makes, let's say, the skill floor a little bit higher for this weapon, in that you have to kind of do a little bit of prediction aiming or lob those stakes, because they do seem to travel in a bit of an arc over longer distances. And so if you want to trigger that fire damage boost mid-flight, if you want to land the headshots to get the third Mysterium proc of lightning, you really have to kind of learn how to lob, how to predict those stakes towards the enemy's heads, and that's part of the fun. You get a nice little satisfying swish crunch sound, and you get those red and blue numbers telling you you've done good. So it was really cool. I love it. I've done one weapon only runs before, and honestly this was by far one of the easiest, and part of it is because it's on the Scarlet Coast, and it's not the hardest area in the game, especially if you don't do the vault, which I didn't. I just cleared all the camps and left it at that, killed the boss. But I had a ton of fun. It's interesting to see what they'll do with the Striga in the long run. I'm extremely partial to this weapon, so I'm hoping they won't nerf it too hard. But my understanding is this is probably going to be some sort of later game weapon that you either discover at a higher Gnosis level, research at a higher Gnosis level, or maybe there'll be some reward for a tough challenge like a vault or a boss, kind of like the Rotweaver is at the bottom of the Wailing Tower. But yeah, currently early access players can get it fairly soon, fairly early in the game, so that alone, in my view, makes the game a little bit easier, which is kind of has been my impression overall since I came back to playing. I got a little bit of time off and could play several hours a day, which is a huge luxury, and my overall impression is that the game overall has gone easier in a sense. I know they tweaked something about how stamina works in combat, and overall I can't tell you what it is because I haven't actually read everything, all the patch and announcement notes, but it does feel more forgiving. I feel like I'm being slowed down less, even at a lower level character with fewer points put into endurance. I still feel like my stamina somehow goes longer and it gets consumed by fewer things somehow. Hmm. So at this point I was wondering if I made a mistake by not bringing some ammo pouches with me, but after clearing the first couple of camps I realized between the ammo drops from the itinerant portal mobs and the caches available on the map, I'll probably be just fine. Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened there. Maybe there was a second explosive barrel behind me that also exploded, or somehow I dashed into the flames, or the radius was larger than expected, but I did end up taking some damage. No big deal. But yeah, this weapon is honestly so many things rolled into one. Again, it's not the only thing it doesn't have compared to its original version, I guess, is the grenade launcher functionality. Because for anyone who hasn't played the original Painkiller, those weapons were all dual function weapons. So every weapon was basically two weapons in one. So your rocket launcher was also a minigun. So you could, fire rockets with one button and then rev up the chain gun, the minigun component of it, with another. And in case of the stake gun, it was a stake gun grenade launcher combo. So you could, fire stakes, and in a similar fashion to what you have here, the enemies that you kill with it would get pinned to walls in a very cool, grimly satisfying fashion. And then you also could lob grenades, which you could bounce around walls or lob over walls, etc. So that's the only thing it arguably doesn't have. However, I will say that the burning stakes, once the stake catches fire mid-flight, does do some splash damage. So it can also double as a sort of a weaker, but more balanced, I guess, a rocket or a grenade launcher type of weapon. Not that I recommend using it that way, because it is a huge waste of its ammo. You only do something like 30 damage with the splash, with the fire splash, I think. That's at best. So no, ideally what you want to do is you want to get some sorts of stun. You want to definitely prioritize stun power, whether it's from your spells. Cursed Bell is pretty awesome. I'm not running it here because I'm not running anything else, but Cursed Bell, the light stun spell, is pretty good. If you get lucky with some Arcana, that increases your stun power. That's, I would say, ideal, because the stake gun, in addition to dealing bonus damage to stunned enemies, also has high stun power itself. So let's say you're fighting a pretty bulky elite grenadier or something, and you start plinking at him, and you see, like, do 80 damage a headshot, and you might initially think to yourself, well, this is not very efficient, I could probably take him down faster with, I don't know, the Midas. But then within a shot or two he gets staggered, and then the next shot kills him, if it's a headshot, for example, right? So it's pretty cool like that. It kind of incentivizes you to use more of those stun related spells, because right now I think probably the most the easiest and most efficient, let's say, spell combo has to do with Burning Stake plus something else like a Storm Ball or something like that, because it does a lot of AoE damage for relatively low effort. And sometimes that's what I do. Sometimes I do Wailing Tower runs, and I want to clear out those large mobs of weak enemies just to level a weapon or an item, etc. So it has its place. But what's cool about Witchfire is, there are playstyles that are technically, you know, at first glance less efficient, but and perhaps slower DPS, slower, you know, mob clearing speeds if you want to treat everything in ARPG terms. But they allow you to do cool shit, and in some ways they allow you to treat certain enemies or situations that would be huge threats to those quote-unquote efficient builds. They allow you to treat those things with greater ease, and in this case I think the Striga, while is not the fastest, you know, mob clearer, it's just it is one of the fastest single target damage weapons, and so you will, you know, clear mobs a little slower, but I'd say overall safer. You know, you'll be safer and you'll be going at a steadier pace. And there's something, again, a little, I've always preferred, you know, kind of fumbling my words here, but what I'm trying to say is I've always also personally preferred things like this that are kind of single shot, semi-auto, projectile based weapons that require, that, you know, kind of slow down the rhythm of combat a little bit, and there's huge damage and pop, and then you're free to dodge, free to reposition, whereas with an auto weapon, you kind of have to keep firing, keep staying in their face, and that's, you know, a riskier playstyle, and I love doing that with Cricket and Rotweaver. I've always loved those small machine guns, but I've only more recently started coming around to things like Midas, Angelus, and a little bit of Ricochet too, although I've yet to experiment more with that. It's that one I think is sort of the less popular of the bunch, although I know it can be powerful. And speaking of Midas, one of the things, Midas and Angelus actually, one of the things I discovered recently is auto weapons like Midas and Angelus are actually in some ways better. They're better for taking advantage of the focus state and hitting those soul sigils. You know, if you can't really miss, you just spray and pray in the general direction of their heads, and you're gonna hit 1 or 2 soul sigils per dash, if not all 3 of them, and then still have a bit of time to immediately transition into doing damage to their heads, to their weak point. So they do have that advantage in kind of better facilitating the that playstyle that happens around or during your focus state when you try to hit the soul sigils and then do the extra damage while the enemies are staggered. That part Striga is not that good at, to be honest, because, you know, you gotta dash, then you gotta fire 1 stake at the soul sigil. Maybe they have 2 soul sigils, who the fuck knows. Then you gotta reload. Then it's very, very slow, and it's ultimately inefficient. It's actually far more efficient to just shoot them twice and then just have them staggered from the weapon itself. So it's nice to know. It's nice to know that, you know, even if a weapon is not my personal favorite, it still has advantages, and down the line you know, I can always experiment more with it once I get bored of whatever I'm currently into. And I'd say probably in the same category is also Echo, which I played around with a bit. Echo specifically, and everything related to sliding, I haven't done much of that, and I know they included a ring that improves sliding, the meteor ring, gives you a fire trail, which is really cool, but I had actually suggested at one point on the Discord that they include something called the ring of snakes or serpents, allowing you to leave a decay trail, and meteor ring is basically that. It extends your sliding distance, plus it leaves a fire trail, and you do impact damage when you bump into enemies. It was really fucking cool. And then you have on top of that the Echo shotgun, which gets the damage boost from sliding. So, you know, it's one of those things I'm just sort of theory crafting in my head. I haven't really played around with much, but because I've just been having that much fun with what I'm currently into, But you know, it's kind of like on the back burner. It's sort of like, you know, one day I'm gonna make a character and I'm gonna play all these weapons that I've been kind of ignoring, all these weapons, all these styles, these items that I've been ignoring thus far. And even if in the you know, the relics, the general support gear pieces, there's more variety now, and it sort of seems to hint at opening up different playstyles that previously weren't that viable, like, you know, staying low health with certain fetishes and having things that inversely correlate your health levels with your damage output, etc. You know, kind of like little glass cannon types of builds. So there's a lot to look forward to there in terms of mechanics. Here I'm fighting the Galley Slave, which is the new boss. They reshuffled the bosses, so now he just jumps off a ship once you've cleared all the mobs, and you have to fight him instead of the Shield Bearer, which, honestly, I liked the Shield Bearer. I think it was a very well designed fight, both the arena and the way everything functioned. It was pretty balanced. Yeah, you could make some broken builds to like slap him in a matter of seconds, but honestly, you could do that with anything in Witchfire if you're, you know, if you've learned enough about the game. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you another time.